I've got a really cool Lightroom tip that I want to share with you today that's going to greatly reduce the amount of time it takes to edit your landscape photos. So a part of the process of taking beautiful landscapes is the editing process that comes along afterwards. As we all know, the camera can't always shoot exactly how our human eyes see an image, or maybe we just want to add a creative touch. Well, today I'm going to show you a really cool tool that you may or may not know about inside of Lightroom and how I edit my landscape photos. So let's hop into Lightroom and take a look. Okay, so now that we're into Lightroom, here's what we're going to do. First of all, we're going to grab the selection tool so we can add different mask layers. So the first one we want to do is grab the sky, and we can see that Lightroom does a pretty good job at grabbing out our sky. I'm going to go ahead and cut off the show overlay so we can actually see what we're doing. Now what I really want to do here is kind of darken the sky up just a little bit so we can see some of those colors pop a little bit better. So I'm going to bring the exposure down, the highlights down, and this is going to be just really subtle edits that we're doing here. We just want this to kind of separate itself and really show those blue color tones. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that off, and let's see a quick before and after so we can see what we've done. So you can see the effect here. It is pretty subtle, but when we add the other elements we're going to be talking about here in a second, it's really going to sell this image. So I'm going to go back into my masks here. But this time I want to create a new mask. Now in this image, there's really no subject, there's no people, there's no background. So what I'm actually going to do is select objects here. And what I want to make sure I do is select this particular area of the image where all these nice little highlights and shadows are coming into play. And we want to edit and manipulate that just a little bit. Okay, so again, same thing. We're going to turn show overlay off. Now I've got a lot of nice highlights here as well as shadow areas. So what I'm going to do is actually pull my highlights up. I'm going to pull my shadows back. I'm going to pull the blacks down just a little bit, kind of darken in the bottom part of this scene so it kind of pushes your eyes forward and not just stay straight here in this area. And I might add just a little bit of contrast and then back off of a couple of these elements. Now the last section here would be our background, which is these mountains. So we're going to do the same thing for a third time. We're going to create a new mask, objects, and I want to paint over just enough of these mountains so it grabs that, but not really anything else. Okay, turn show overlay off. And the first thing I want to do is dehaze because there is a slight haze coming onto this back mountain. So if we go on down to dehaze, and we're just going to crank that up just a little bit. We want it to still be a little bit hazy back there because if we go too far, it doesn't look that great. But we also want these two mountain ranges to be separate, because they're not just one big range. You can see this one comes off to here, this one comes in behind it. So we want a little bit of that separation with the haze. But then what I would also like to do, I'm going to add a little bit of green tint into the green areas, and I'm going to warm it up just slightly. And then I'm just going to make some basic little edits here. I'm going to bring my exposure down just a little bit. I might actually pull the highlights up and then the shadows down. So we have a pretty nice looking image. So let's take a look at the final before and after of how we started with this image, where it was a beautiful image, but it just felt a little bit flat. And now we have this after image where we can see that it's changed quite drastically, but it's very subtle. So this is going to be a little bit more what it would look like with the human eye, just having the different areas of contrast. Maybe I went a little bit too dark in these bottom areas, but that's something very easy that you can fix up. I remember when I first got my start into photography, when I was editing landscapes like this, I was doing everything in Photoshop because at the time, Lightroom didn't have all these super cool tools like they do today. I remember having to manually go in and cut out the different layers to do the different effects and change the exposure and do all the settings. So having tools like this masking tool and using a little bit of AI in your editing process is phenomenal. Now, me personally, I don't like AI making all the decisions, but if it can help me to mask out areas where I can ultimately make the decisions, I think that's awesome. But I hope today's video helped you out. And if it did, be sure to help me out by leaving a like on this video or commenting down below. But I hope you enjoyed today's video. And as always, be sure to create something new today.